Top 10 People Who Have Been Lost at Sea the Longest. Dive into the haunting chronicles of human endurance and the unforgiving sea in our exploration of the top 10 people who have been lost at sea the longest. From historic maritime mysteries to remarkable tales of survival, join us as we unravel the incredible stories of those who faced the boundless ocean's challenges and emerged as testaments to the indomitable human spirit. Subscribe now to embark on this captivating journey through the depths of history and the enigmatic waters that have shaped it. Number 10, Lisala Folau, 27 hours. The year 2022 begins with a drama, on the Tonga Islands. A violent tsunami ravages the land. Lisala Folau, a 57-year-old retiree, living on the island of Atata, takes refuge at the top of a tree, despite a disability affecting her walking. Carried away by a 6 meters wave, he stayed in the water for more than a whole day before swimming to Tonga Tapu, located almost 8 kilometers. An incredible performance that earned him the nickname Aquaman in the local press. Number 9, Harrison Ojigbo Kene, 3 days. Underwater, an unbelievable story. This Nigerian cook survived 60 hours in the hull of his tugboat, at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. But how is it possible? An air pocket in the wreckage. Imagine the faces of the rescuers, when a hand grabbed them, when they were no longer expecting any trace of life. Unfortunately, the other members of the crew perished in the accident. Number 8, 15 survivors, 13 days at sea. The true story of the jellyfish raft. Back in time, we are on July 2, 1816. La Méduse, a large ship carrying 400 passengers, fatally ran aground on a sandbar off the coast of Mauritania, in the Atlantic. The command orders its evacuation. Good shitty advice, since the boat does not sink immediately. Those who remain there will even be rescued. 150 people therefore take refuge on the raft, originally built for the gear. From the first day, all the food is eaten. The next day, about 20 people have already disappeared. Between depressions, brawls, hunger and climatic hazards, the deaths are linked. After 2 weeks, the ordeal is coming to an end. A ship, leaving for Senegal, saves the survivors. They are then only 15. It is this scene that represents the famous painting by Théodore Géricault. Number 7, 2 men, a woman, and a child, 32 days. It was in December 2020, off Papua New Guinea. On the 22nd of the month, 12 people, originating from the city of Buka, embark on a small boat, destination the islands of the Carteret Atoll. Unfortunately, they capsized. The survivors managed to right the boat, and take refuge there. They feed on a few coconuts, found on the surface of the water, and save the shells to collect rainwater. After this month of ordeal, a fishing boat spots them and brings them back to Honiara, capital of the Solomon Islands. Only 3 adults and a 12-year-old girl returned safe and sound from this tragedy. Number 6, Tammy Oldham Ashcroft, 41 days. Tammy Oldham and Richard Sharp set off on a sailboat in 1983. The couple of navigators had plans to connect Tahiti to San Diego, California. On October 13th, after 3 weeks of idyllic sailing, it's a descent into hell. They are surprised by a hurricane. The waves reach 15 meters high, the wind blows at more than 250 kilometers per hour, and their boat capsizes. The 23-year-old lost consciousness. She only wakes up 27 hours later, alone, in the middle of the ocean. Her boyfriend disappeared in the storm. Despite bereavement and head trauma, survival takes precedence. She builds herself a makeshift sail with a broken pole, recovers some food from the debris, and sails on instinct. After 6 weeks, she finally arrives on solid ground. The ordeal is finally over. In 2002, she wrote her story in a biography entitled Red Sky and Morning, a true story of love, loss and survival at sea. It is also from his story that the film Adrift is taken, released in theaters in 2018. Number 5, Louis Jordan, 66 days. The 30-year-old American went to sea on January 29, 2015, in search of fish. Out of the current Gulf Stream, he capsizes and breaks his shoulder. The mast of his boat is broken, and all his electronic equipment is giving up the ghost. Out of the question for the man not to see his family again. He's fighting. Building a makeshift mast, fishing with his bare hands, collecting rainwater. He survived, despite his injury and his slow progression. Finally, it was a German tanker that spotted it off North Carolina, more than 320 kilometers from the American East Coast. Number 4, Stephen Callahan, 76 days. End of 1981. Mitterrand as president. Bob Marley and Brassens have just left us. Stephen Callahan, a 29-year-old American, sets out on a sailing trip. In January, he is on the Canary Islands and takes the road to the Antilles, about 5,000 kilometers. That is, a maximum of 1 month of crossing. Finally, that is on paper. After a week of navigation, the weather deteriorates, the waves pierce his boat, the ship sinks. He retrieves his survival bag, and takes refuge in his lifeboat. It is in the middle of the Atlantic. The drift will last for many weeks. He will manage to convert salt water into fresh water, thanks to a distiller on board his survival bag. He will use a fork as a patch for his deflated makeshift boat and fish as best he can. After 76 days, when he thinks he is doomed, the fate changes. He sees an island offshore. He has just reached Marie-Galante. Fishermen come to rescue him. He is finally only a few kilometers from his initial objective, the island of Antigua. He then wrote his story in the book Adrift, 76 Days Lost at Sea. Number 3, Poon Lim, 133 days. Originally from China, he was only 25 in 1942, when he was hired on an English ship. He was sailing off Cape Town when the ship was torpedoed by the Nazis. The young man jumps into the water to save his skin, wearing a simple life jacket. The only survivor of this terrible assault, he manages, after 2 hours in the water, to find a lifeboat. On board, some biscuits and a little water. These few foodstuffs, a bit of fishing, rare sea birds and rainwater will allow him to survive. He was finally found by fishermen, not far from Brazil, after more than 4 months of survival. Number 2, 9. Lucio Rendon, Salvador Ordonez, and Jesus Eduardo Vivand, 9 months and 9 days. They were 5 fishermen to leave the port of San Blas, in Mexico, in October 2015. While they were to return a few days later, only 3 of them found the mainland, after long months adrift. According to the survivors, the 2 other companions would have died of starvation, after having refused to eat raw fish and turtles. For some, these deaths could be more a matter of cannibalism. Greedy. Those who have traveled 9,000 kilometers on a makeshift boat totally deny this theory. You amazing me. Number 1, Jose Salvador Alvarenga, 14 months. November 17, 2012, the Salvadoran fisherman goes to sea with his buddy, Ezequiel Cordoba. On the program, 30 hours of navigation to fish off the Mexican coast. Finally, the 2 men experience a real nightmare. First, a storm. Their boat is damaged, and their GPS destroyed. Despite everything, they manage to get closer to the coast. While they have land in sight, the engine fails. They grab their radio to call for help. It drops in turn. As if that weren't enough, the storm isn't calming down. She shakes them for 5 days, and brings them back to the middle of the ocean, without radio, without GPS and without life. To survive, they fished with their bare hands, ate raw, found bits of food and trash on the surface, and ended up drinking their own urine. After 4 months, Cordoba dies, of malnutrition and depression. Salvador therefore remains alone for another 10 months. He finally found the ground, on the island of Tile, on January 30, 2014, that is to say, 438 days after his departure. A horrifying story, worthy of a movie script, which commands, really, respect. Today, He is still nicknamed the Castaway of the Pacific. As the sun sets on our voyage through these remarkable stories of survival and resilience, we're reminded of the indomitable human spirit that has braved the most treacherous of waters. From the courage of those who face the unknown head-on to the mysteries that still linger on the horizon, these tales will forever echo in the annals of history. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the top 10 people who have been lost at sea the longest. If you found these stories as captivating as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay afloat with our future adventures. Until next time, may your own journeys be safe and your horizons boundless.